Here you go.
Awesome. So let's bring everyone in and let's get started. And like I said, Sharon, Marissa, Donna, if you see people trying to join while we're involved, if you could let them in, that would be great. You have the power.
Absolutely.
Good morning, everyone, or sorry, good afternoon. Here we are, and just giving a little moment to take a deep breath. Okay. Welcome, everyone. We remind you that your conference registration allows you to access the SEED conference, as well as the amazing 60+ workshops hosted by the NOFA New York Winter Conference. There's such a broad range of topics and presenters to learn from. Both the SEED conference and the Winter Conference are all in one program, which we're pasting into the chat. We are also pasting in the chat the community agreements, which frames the respectful and supportive atmosphere all attendees have a responsibility to create. Please take a moment to review these agreements if you have not done already. Our huge thanks and appreciation go out to our sponsors, these sponsors of both the SEED conference and the Winter Conference. Their fiscal support really represents their belief in the combined value of community education and sustainable agriculture. All Black, Indigenous people and people of color conference attendees are invited to access the In Living Color Affinity space, facilitated by Amanda David and Madonna Bushi. To access the space, please contact them via email, which we will be pasting into the chat. Welcome to the Northeast Seed Conference and Celebration. We're so happy to have you. The 2023 Northeast Community Seed Conference is planned entirely by volunteers. In faithful partnership with NOFA New York, this is the 4th iteration of a Northeast-focused seed event. Again, big love for NOFA New York for all they've been doing for us. The phrase Northeast is defined as an area from Maryland through ascending U.S. states, crowned with Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and Atlantic Canada. If you're joining us from beyond the quote Northeast, you're very welcome to be here. Thanks for attending. The Seed Conference intends to cultivate a respectful regional seed community that learns and grows together and supports each other through joy and through hardship. Another way to be part of this regional seed community is to join something called the Organic Seed Commons, which I'll be pasting to the chat in just a second. Within the Organic Seed Commons, you'll find various regional seed network groups. Please feel free to join the Northeast Regional Seed Network group on the Organic Seed Commons. And if you would please mute yourself as you enter, that'd be great. Just trying not to distract things. We invite all presenters to use the Zoom chat to introduce themselves and to name the First Nations lands they occupy. To discover whose lands you live upon, visit Native Land Digital at native-land.ca, which I'll post in the chat as well. It's a wonderful website. It really actually spans the globe, not just the United States. Rather than relegating plants to their Linnaean classification of family, we ask all present to consider the families of people that have been abundantly supported by all plants through time. Everyone here and their loved ones simply do not exist without the seeds given by plants. First among those gifts are seeds. Without these seeds, we do not live. Every plant has an origin in a specific place, near or far from here, and many have undergone journeys across the earth and back. Before planting, take a moment to ask yourself, what do I know of the lands and hands that have shaped and supported this plant? If I have purchased these seeds, do I know where these seeds I rely upon have come from and who has grown them? What can I do going forward to respect this plant, those places, and those individuals, regardless of how near or how far away? Many of us think of seed as something we buy from a catalog rather than from cherished plants we harvest seed from ourselves. the buying of seeds from catalogs or online is a relatively new reality. Please take a moment to imagine what it would look and feel like to share seed in a community rather than only through commerce. Then welcome to Polenta, a culinary gateway to discovering food and seed traditions. My name is Heron Breen. I live in central Maine in St. Albans. And I'd love to also introduce my co-host, Leigh Ollman, who's making all this fantabulous stuff go on in the background. Leigh, could you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sharon. Hi, everyone. I'm here behind the scenes, and I'm coming to you from Ghent, New York, in the Hudson Valley, occupied Mohican lands, and I am so honored to be here with all of you today.
Thank you, Leigh, for all you're doing. Leigh is a very important part of our volunteer planners, as are our presenters today. Presenters Sharon, Maynard, Donna, Dyrek, Marissa, Alfiero. Let me just say a few things. Today's presenters are bringing their great seed and food wisdom to share as a team. And these presenters are also saying to you, if you as an attendee are inspired by this workshop and would also like to share your seed stories and favorite recipes with the greater Northeast seed community, we're inviting you to do so via a link I'm going to put in the chat to a Google form that basically allows you to share your recipes and stories, and we'll be putting these up online. So it is something where we're asking you to, give not anonymously, but share yourself. So without further ado, I'm going to give an opportunity for our presenters to introduce themselves in just a second, but just the arc of the day, just to understand what we're doing today. So we're first going to start with introductions, and then Marissa's going to give a little sense of what is the scope, what is this all about, how did this come to be? And then these wonderful folks are going to share some recipes of how polenta has come into their life from kind of different perspectives. And plenty of time for Q&A for that. Then we're going to take a break. In the second hour, we're going to walk through the origins of these crops that make up this dish that we currently call polenta. And then we're also going to share, how do you save seed yourself from these plants that make up polenta? So I'm going to ask our three presenters to introduce themselves, starting with Sharon, and then Donna, and then Marissa. Sharon, take it away. Oh, hold on. Just 1 second. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Sharon, go ahead.
Thank you, Heron. My name is Sharon Maynard, and I just said hi and welcome to you in Mohegan. And I'm from New London, Connecticut. And right now, my husband and I, we're residing here in Pequot territory. My tribe, the Mohegan Indians, live our reservation's about 15 miles from here in Uncasville. And the Mohegans were at one time part of the Pequot tribe. And at a certain point in the 1600s, we broke off from them and set up our own tribe across the Thames River, on the west side of the Thames River. So I would just like to, from going from that acknowledgement, I would like to thank Aaron, and I would like to also thank the ladies, Marissa and Donna, for everybody for being so patient and for being so on everything, making all the meetings and putting our presentations together. It's been a really great experience. And so we're very happy to bring this and present this to you, all of you today. I'm from New London, as I said. I've spent about 25 years in my tribe's garden projects. We've had a variety of different ones. And right now, I am very interested in food sovereignty, decolonizing our diets, and also seed saving, of course, and out and enjoying the fruits of our labor through our heirloom seeds, and connecting with our ancestors through what we grow and what we eat. So thank you very much. And I think next is Marissa.
Oh, no, next is Donna. Donna, jump in.
I'm sorry, Donna. Next is Donna.
Yeah. Donna, you're muted.
Here we go. I'm Donna Dyrek. I'll double unmute. I'm Donna Dyrek. I'm currently in South Central Western Maine. I'm generally in Western Maine, in Central Maine, Somerset County. I've been actively gardening all my life and just made it a little bit more intense about 35-ish years ago, when I started having kids and wanted to stay home and hang around with them. And that's when I started working for Fedco, doing trials, grow outs, seed growing. I've grown flowers, vegetables, herbs, grains, and I've seed grown tomatoes, peppers, herbs, flowers, grains, just about a little bit of this and that. And also saved a few varieties where I was given, 13 seed and said, let's see what you can get from this. I brought back the Shirafumi peppers for one, the fish, and one of the barleys. I can't remember whether it was Burbank or Hullis. But anyway, right now I'm kind of on a different journey and that I'm learning more seed saving. And this year, my biggest excitement was learning how to hand pollinate squash and kind of bumbled through it. It was fun and it was a great learning experience. And I was glad I had a patient mentor teaching me how to do this. But that's where I'm going and that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Cool. Hi guys, thank you so much Sharon and Donna and Heron and Leigh and everyone for this incredible conference. I feel very grateful to have been a part of this process, to be here today, and for all of the mentorship that I have received from these incredible seed stewards. I live in what's now known as Central Vermont on unceded Abenaki lands. I've lived here for almost 2 years. I moved from Southern Rhode Island. And I work as a farmhand and a market garden manager. And this summer I'll be going into my 8th season farming. So seed work is relatively new to me. Last summer was the first season in which I kind of did my first true harvest, I guess, and pretty actively worked to grow a little bit of seed for myself. And I'm very excited about some radicchio that I dug up and I'm trying to overwinter. We'll see how it does to plant back out next year. Work on some cold hardy radicchios, we'll see. And I attended the 2021 seed conference 2 years ago, where I first met Heron and a lot of these other wonderful people. And it really did kind of blow my mind. And I'd been feeling the call of seeds for some time before that, but didn't really know how to act upon that call, where I should start, what to do. So I've just been so fortunate to have these mentors around me. And of course, the plant beings that I work with who are my greatest mentors. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this because cooking is one of the most important things to me. Feeding people, nourishing people. It's part of why I love growing food and growing seed now. Yeah, so thank you all so much for being here. Really grateful for all these faces and for this presentation we're about to have.
Thank you. Thank you, all three. Now we're going to have a little introduction from Marissa, and Leigh's going to share some slides to sort of discover what we're doing here today. So you're muted.
Thank you. So we're here today to talk about polenta, which if you're not familiar with what is kind of the modern version, what we call polenta in this day and age, and it's basically just cornmeal, water, salt, and it's made into a porridge like that. However, what we now call polenta has various different origins. Of course, cornmeal is not native to polenta is what we see as an Italian dish, cornmeal, corn not native to Italy. So I think we had kind of been discussing a mutual love that the four of us in our group shared for this dish and wondering about how something that is seen as such a staple food, such an iconic dish in a lot of regions of Italy, how that came to be, given that it's made from corn. Similarly, we'll be talking about tomato sauce and tomatoes, again, seen as very ubiquitous and iconic Italian foods, not native to that continent at all whatsoever either. So that was kind of where we wanted to explore the ways that those food crops have moved throughout time. And just a shared love of polenta was what got us digging into this specific food. So what we call polenta originates from the term pulse or pultum in ancient Rome. That's what they had called it. However, this dish goes back as far as ancient Sumeria and Mesopotamia. It was originally made with millet or rye or a coarse grain flour, usually spelt. In ancient Rome, it was more traditionally made with a coarse spelt flour. However, throughout Italy, prior to corn making its way to Italy in 1550, it was just whatever regional grain or starch people had. It was barley, buckwheat, chestnuts, fava beans, lentils, really whatever there was, people would grind up and make into a porridge. So 1550, corn hit the scene in Italy, and they had this funny thing where they called it grano turco, translating to grains of Turkey, because Italians, there wasn't a great sense of geography back at that time. And so anything that came from somewhere far away, they just thought came from Turkey. So that was the name that corn had for quite some time over there. And so Christopher Columbus reported, there's recordings, he had seen indigenous folks making a cornmeal porridge that would be what we now know as polenta, and serving it with sometimes meats or vegetables, other kinds of sauces, in the same way that we see polenta served, with all kinds of fun add-ons now. So that's really the true first polenta as we know it, or as we kind of refer to it today. So once it hit the scene in Italy, it became especially popular in northern Italy, which was interesting for me to find out because my whole family is from southern Italy, and I didn't realize that it's like pasta is the southern Italian thing, and then the northern Italian sort of classic thing is polenta, which I never realized because I've always liked polenta better. So I guess corn just grows better in the northern regions, wheat in the southern regions. And it became a staple food item amongst peasants and farmers in northern Italy. During Roman times, it was all classes of folks ate polenta. However, as time went on, it just became for poor folks in Italy, and it actually became quite an issue because farmers would only eat polenta with nothing else added to it for most every meal, to the point at which pellagra became an issue around there. However, there are many ways to enjoy it: fried or sliced as a side, a main course. It's very versatile of a dish. Different regions, even not just in Italy, kind of everywhere, but there's different Italian specialty regions of how they prepare their polenta in some specific way. The original way that it was prepared there was to be poured from a very high length into a copper pot called a paiolo. That would then be stirred for an hour for the starch granules to properly gelatinize. So kind of intense. You can use different grinds depending on your preference. And we see polenta nowadays, I think, has become, it's very ubiquitous throughout the world. It's very funny that it's this peasant food that is now a staple kind of upscale fine dining thing you see in gourmet restaurants. That's where I first interacted with polenta outside of the context of my Calabrian mother's cooking, was seeing it in a restaurant where I was working as this very chic thing. And I was like, oh, I thought this was one of mom's peasant dishes that she likes to make. Like, huh. So it's a really universally loved food. It has these ancient indigenous corn traditions around it. It's become an Italian staple. It's become a staple all around, including a culturally important food staple in the southern US as grits. It's popular in the Swiss Alps, in Slavic regions, throughout the Mediterranean. So polenta is a very well beloved food that we're about to dig into. And I will leave you all with this little this quote I found before, just some quick pictures, and then hand it to Sharon, which is that la polenta è utile per quattro cose. Serve da minestra, serve da pane, sazia e scalda le mani. Polenta is good for 4 things: to make soup, to make bread, to fill you up, and to warm your hands. And so then there's just a couple quick paintings and engravings to share with you. Just some things I found, based most of these around the 1700s, of folks making and selling polenta. And the next slide is, I think there's it's the polenta salesman. So some preparations of that, and I'll leave you before Sharon takes this over with what we say in my parents' household whenever my mother is making polenta. My dad always says, well, we better have plenty of it. Over to you, Sharon.
Oh, thank you, Marissa. Very good. I think now that I am going to present Leigh. There we go. It's coming. We're almost there. Righty. And good stuff. Yes, what I brought for everybody today, I brought a recipe for polenta using what we call in the Mohican tribe yolk cake. And yolk cake is parched ground corn, and the corn that we use is generally a flint corn. We used flint corn, and it's called flint because the outer coating to each corn kernel is extremely hard, and when you dry it, it's very easy to keep through the winter time. So I also put in parentheses there the word cook, and that's when you trace yolk cake back a couple of thousand years. That's the word. That's the Proto-Algonquin word for yolk cake. We call it yolk cake. Our neighbors are from Rhode Island, the Narragansett. They call it no cake, but both of it, they have a different dialect than we do. Both together, of course, it's all parched ground corn. So next slide. Here we go with an introduction, and I think that Marissa did a really good job on the introduction that she gave. Some of it here is probably a little bit redundant, but I also found that very interesting, that the Romans and before the Romans were making a polenta dish, but not with corn, because corn hadn't made it there yet. And it was a gruel that they made, and with all sorts of grains, including legumes. So that predated until the corn got there into Italy. And now, of course, today polenta is no longer associated with those other grains. Lots of times it's just corn, or in case of various different polentas, cornmeal can be mixed with other things like buckwheat, if you prefer that. And different variety of corns, and even grits, as Marissa had mentioned, which are often ground more coarsely than polenta usually is, and are sometimes made with a different variety of corn, which is sometimes they use dent corn instead of flint corn, but perfectly acceptable substitute in just about any situation requiring polenta. And that's another thing that I found out. You don't need to go to the store and find a package that says polenta on it. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with using a product designed exclusively polenta, but you can just as easily use any medium or coarse ground corn. Next slide. So what is yolk cake? So to us people here in Mohegan, it's parched ground corn and called yolk cake. And at the end of the season, we take our corn and we dry it. Right now, I think predominantly, I would say, if you see in the picture in the left-hand upper corner, we use a variety of corn, flint corn, that's called Rhode Island. It's called Rhode Island White Cap. And it's something that also other people in this area use in the Narragansett and Rhode Island, this variety of corn. And we also have a variety of corn that is Sapsahik corn. And that's a Delaware variety, and it is a very dark blue, almost a black kind of a corn that can be used in ground and also to make yolk cake. Our yolk cake is used in ceremonies. It's not just used for eating, but it's used in a ceremony. So it has a spiritual connotation to it as well, as do everything really in life, but yolk cake especially because it's corn. It's almost like a cornerstone, one of the cornerstones of our culture. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see mortar and pestle, because after we parch that corn and after we do that and we're getting ready to grind it, we'll put it into a mortar and pestle and grind it up. And that picture happens to be a mortar and pestle that was made by my uncle, and it's made from maple. And both the mortar and pestle are wood. You'll see that lots of times to grind corn, you'll see that made out of stone, sometimes soapstone, but sometimes even granite. And if you have a stone mortar and pestle and you grind your corn, eventually, if you eat it, you're eating it over every day, through your lifetime. What happens is it starts to wear your teeth down, so lots of times you'll see that people are using either a wooden mortar and pestle, or a wooden mortar and a stone pestle, or a stone mortar and a wooden pestle. So that helps to alleviate that situation. So we do parch it in hot embers from a wood fire, from a probably hardwood fire, I would say mostly hardwood fire. And that causes the corn to be nixilized, and that enhances the niacin content of the corn. So in that way, we were able to not be victim to a lot of nutritional diseases. It did make it more nutritional for us to make it that way. And then it's a very simple food. We used to take it, put it in a bag, put that bag around our neck and take it with us when we were traveling. It was a traveling food. And when you got to where you're going, or even while you were still on foot walking, you could take some of that, you could mix it with a little water, and it was very nourishing. It would stick by you. Sometimes we'd add a little berry, a little bit of dry meat to it, throw it back into the fire. And but it lasted a long time, and it was a good way to go. So it was for journeying or traveling. The colonists started calling it journey or journey food or journey cakes. And eventually that term got morphed into what we call today Johnny cake. So the word Johnny cake is thought to be derived from the word yolk cake or no cake. Next slide, please. So what are we going to do? We're going to parch this corn first. Now, you don't have to parch the corn first. You're going to get plenty of recipes that probably don't even mention parching corn first. But here in Mohegan, we're going to parch our corn first. And to do that, we're going to need whole dried corn kernels from a flint corn variety, your choice. Or you can even go into the grocery store and you can walk down like the Goya aisle or wherever they have quote unquote international food, but wherever they're stockpiling different varieties of corn for different reasons. And lots of times you can find the whole dried corn kernels there, and they're not necessarily a flint variety, but it'll do. So we're going to do that, and we're going to set our oven. Okay, so we're not going to throw it in the fire today because we have a 21st century method here going on. So we're going to set our oven for 350 degrees, and we're going to need a sheet pan, and we're not going to put any oil or anything on that sheet pan. It's going to be dry, and we'll put our corn in that sheet pan. We'll put it in the oven, and I'm going to say give it 15 minutes, and it's going to be slightly brown. And you might want to open the oven and shake it around a little bit and maybe give it a couple of more minutes to parch. The more time that you give it, the darker it'll be, of course, and the nuttier it'll be. And don't be surprised that even if it pops, it starts popping a little bit, because all corn pops, and to some degree. And so some of it might be a little poppity. And that's okay. You can use it that way, not a problem. For up here in, I don't know if you can see my cursor, you probably can't, but the picture up at top is one of our kids, a couple of our kids actually in our summer program, and they're using a stone mortar and pestle there, and they're grinding up the corn. And I like them to do that so they can see how much work that is. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And somebody was probably at it for most of the day to keep their families fed through the day. So then on your upper right hand side, there's my grandson, Kane, and he has an electric grinder. So that's the 21st century grinder. And he's helping his grandmother. What a guy. And he's helping his grandmother grind up his corn for yoke. Now, once it's ground, and you don't have to grind it to powder, you can coarse, can be medium, whatever suits you. Then you're ready to go. In the old days, the Mohican people would take, whenever they got together, like in the 1800s, because we didn't have ice cream before that, but they would take it and they would sprinkle it on top of like ice cream or whatever to flavor their food. And sometimes they would eat it for breakfast as well. Next slide, please. So my recipe that I brought our ingredients here. You can use, you can start with water or chicken stock or vegetable stock. You're going to use 1 cup of coarse cornmeal and 5 cups of your liquid. Some people say 4 cups, some people say 4.5 cups. So you can kind of mess with it a little bit to see what kind of consistency you're going to get from each. Probably start with a little less than the whole 5 cups. And if it's getting too thick or too punky, you can always add a little more fluid to it. And a dash of kosher salt. I use kosher salt. I like kosher salt. It dissolves well, and it's just a tad sweeter than your regular table salt. The stuff that's been iodized, it almost has kind of a bitter aftertaste in a way. And then adding on a little extra, we have, I got a 1-minute warning. So I got the butter, olive oil, or whatever you can stir into it. A medium heavy gauge saucepan with a lid and a wooden spoon is what you're going to need. And that's exactly what you're going to need. You're going to need a heavy saucepan of some kind. Next slide. There we go. So you add water or stock to the large saucepan, saucier, put over the heat. Sprinkle in the cornmeal while you're whisking it. Now, some people start it cold, in cold water. They say it does not clump as badly if you start it cold and bring it up to a simmer. A lot of people bring it to the boil first and then add it and then turn it down to a simmer. And you're going to keep stirring it. This is the cover and cover off if you don't want to stand with it completely for 45 minutes or so. And then it will start to thicken. And once you get it to where you want it thickened and you get the lumps out of it, you might have a few lumps. Then you're going to stir in your butter or olive oil or maybe another kind of fat. And then you're good to go. And it's just ready to serve right then. Next slide, please. So this is it. These are the tips that we were talking about. The nutty flavor of the polenta, the longer you cook it. Adding oils or butter. Of course, we wouldn't in pre-colonial days because we didn't have anything. We didn't make butter out of anything because we didn't have any cows or anything like that. So we didn't have butter or cheese or anything like that. So that's something that's the 21st century to add in. And about the boiling water, maybe starting it with cold water to see if that helps eliminate lumps. A wooden spoon is not necessary, but it is traditional. It is traditional. And do not be afraid to add a little water if it seems too thick. And I think that's almost the final slide. Next slide. Yep, there we go. That's it. That's the last slide. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions in the chat or any questions for Sharon before we move on to Marissa? What is splitting? Was there something that you said that was Sharon around splitting? Yes.
While you're cooking it and while it's getting thicker, okay, and you're stirring it. And at some point you're going to be, when you're stirring it, you're kind of almost turning the whole mass of it kind of over because it's starting to thicken and get kind of, and splitting is just that. When you're turning it over, it's just splitting and falling to the side and splitting and falling to the side. So you really should probably add a little bit of liquid to it at that point so that it doesn't do that. It'll make the consistency more, it'll make it just more smooth, easier to serve.
Okay, thank you. One more question, if anyone knows, and I'll chime in. Could the grains be toasted after being made into meal?
Oh, no, but I'll tell you what we would do with any of the leftovers. We would fry it up in the morning. We'll get out the frying pan in the morning. Any polenta or mush, as we would call it, that's left over, we would spoon that onto a frying pan with a little bit of butter and toss that and make some nice little cakes out of it.
Yeah, my experience with that is that basically if it's toasted after it's ground, it basically turns into more like a roux or breadcrumbs in a sense, meaning that those individual, when you take that roasted kernel and then and basically grind it up, you're kind of exploding those particles, and then they're raw, and even though they've been cooked sort of, they're still able to cook and turn into the cornmeal. But if you toast it after you've grinded it, they become kind of individual particles. And so it's a different consistency. So it's more gritty or more, not the word sandy, but it's not quite the same thing as polenta, but it does keep longer in a certain way. That what I've noticed is that the dish polenta will keep a really long time if you toast the kernels after you grind them, or toast the flour after you grind it.
Okay, that's very interesting. I would have never thought of doing it that way. So
yeah, there's some interesting things.
Yep.
There's some interesting things about making polenta with corn that's been frozen. So one of the reasons why I had such a impetus for northern environments was that when the kernels are frozen, they actually it's actually better, and as it gets broken up or roasted, and pounded, it actually creates like a different type of particle. So that's one of the reasons why northern Italy or northeast is sort of famous for its polenta, is actually the freezing of the kernels in the wintertime creates a better polenta. And I'm going to turn this. I'm going to turn this over to our person with some really rooted Italian heritage to share their family recipes. Thank you so much, Marissa, for pulling back the family recipe curtain, and we'll understand if you're leaving a few things out.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I am not leaving things out. There's no secret tricks. It is food for all. It's kind of meant to, it's meant that anyone should, and I encourage to be able to make this recipe. My polenta recipe is the way that my mother made it. She moved to the States from Calabria, Italy, when she was a little girl in the 70s. And it's the same way that her mother used to make it, and probably even beyond then. And it is a recipe I try and share with as many. It's like funny to even call it a recipe, because it's just like, it's something that is so simple and so wonderful, and I try and share it with as many people as possible because I love it so much. Like if I have a friend that I'm like, wait, I haven't made polenta for you before? I'm so sorry. Like, what am I doing? Oh my God. It's when I need comfort food, like something nourishing and good. It was amongst my mother's, she called them like her peasant meals, that were the things that she ate as a kid. And it's just like cheap, quick, easy thing she can make that my sister and I loved and would gobble up. And so polenta has always long been the favorite. And if there's, let's see, the slide starts a couple of them in, if you could please leave. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, so this is it. Sometimes I actually get a little nervous when people deviate, like if I'm making polenta with someone and they're like, let's add this, and I'm just sort of like, oh, whoa, okay. So it's great to hear other people's polenta traditions and encourage myself to get out of my own little box with it. But I sometimes get very caught up in sticking to my own traditions. I love hearing other people's though. So we do it, it's essentially just a lot of alliums and a lot of olive oil and paprika. So it really doesn't matter what kind of onion that you use. I don't recall if there's a specific one my mom preferred, but it would just be 2 large onions for this size batch. And then I would say 17 to 25 cloves of garlic, something in that range. You know, at least 2 bulbs. I would say it's the kind of thing you look at and you're like, wow, that's a lot of garlic, but is it enough? No. So you'll start out by pouring a generous amount of olive oil into your pan, enough to really be able to splash it around, and you'll turn that on to medium heat as you start to prepare your onions by cutting them into small to medium chunks, chopping them, and you'll toss those into the pan once it's warm. And after that, you'll finely dice, or you can use a press to mince your garlic. And once the onions are getting translucent, you'll add the garlic in and lower the heat so it doesn't burn. And you really want it to look like it is just garlic and onions simmering in like a sauce of olive oil, like really just a lot of olive oil. So probably as you add all the things in, you'll want to glom some more in. Is always a great idea. Meanwhile, so similarly to Sharon, and what she was describing, we also use wooden spoons only. That's I guess the traditional Italian way as well. And I didn't even realize this was a chef's trick. It was how I learned to make it, but using cold water to start out as well. So that's what I'll do is take a cup of cornmeal I do with 4 cups of water to that. And you may need to add more depending on the grind of cornmeal you're using sometimes. And mixing the cold water into your cornmeal slowly so that it doesn't form clumps, so that it's just gradually worked in. Then you have all your water in, set that heating. I just put it on high, wait for it to boil, and then lower it once it starts boiling. It's good to have a second person too. If you want to work on alliums while someone is stirring the polenta, makes for it to be much easier, a fun teamwork moment. So also add in some salt to your mixture as it's cooking, the polenta mixture, so that you'll just want to keep on low heat and just gradually keep stirring. I don't keep a constant eye on it as I sometimes should, so just be careful it doesn't burn, but it is good to really make sure you're consistently mixing it together. And once the polenta is properly cooked, as in there's no grittiness, you can taste that the starches and the grains have kind of gelatinized properly, and it's that right consistency. And then at the same time, once your onions are nice and translucent, your alliums are fragrant and ready, and their little pool of oil, at that point, I'll usually put in a lot of paprika into my allium mixture, probably about 2 tablespoons, I would say, something roughly like that. And then I'll fold all of that into the polenta itself and mix it in. Usually I add a splash of olive oil more, and salt and pepper to taste, as well as sometimes more paprika. Usually it's like this glossy orange color by the time that all is said and done. And at this point, something I love to add that my mother did not do growing up, but I'm a big fan of throwing in some kind of tender green like arugula or mizuna, just for that little pop. And my mom also would put in chickpeas sometimes, which was another traditional Italian way of eating polenta, adding some kind of legume to supplement it, a little bit of protein, bulk it up. So just depends on your preference. And we'll see a picture of a big batch of polenta on the next slide. Thank you. I was making it to feed about 15 people. It was a huge hit. And that in the back is a fun add-on. A friend had brought some maitakes that she harvested, and I seared those up to add in. Mushrooms are great in there as well. So then something else you can eat with your polenta, if you so feel inclined, is tomato sauce. So let's dig into that quick. Awesome. So another wonderful food that, we all know, something I grew up eating a lot, seeing a lot of tomato sauce parties happening, big vats. Once, all my relatives harvested from their massive sprawling Italian gardens that they brought to tend here in the States. So this is the way that I do it and try and can for myself every summer as I'm able to, so that I can enjoy my fresh sauce throughout the winter as some comfort food. So I start off again with olive oil and onions and garlic, the classic way to start a dish. So put some olive oil into a large pot, usually like a big, one of those big metal soup pots, and I'll let that start to heat on medium low. After that, I'll take a large onion. If I wrote yellow, doesn't really matter. I say what you have on hand. Add that to the pot. I'm a minute warning. So I'll just say peppers, add in after that. Let your onions and peppers get translucent and cooked. Finely mince the garlic and add that in. Lower the heat. Hot pepper if you so choose. After that is when I'll fill the pot to about halfway with tomatoes chopped into large chunks. I am not discriminating about types because I just will take any scraps I can get. So I use cherries, heirlooms, not just Roma or paste. All work great. You might just have to cook out the water longer. And I usually let that cook down to about half of its original height in the pan. And I'll strip oregano off the stem, chop that up and throw it in, sometimes rosemary or thyme. And at the very end is when I like to roughly chop up my basil and throw in quite a lot of that, just so it cooks down ever so slightly. And then you have your sauce ready for your plate and maybe on top of your polenta.
Thank you, Marissa. We have a question from the chat from Nicole. Are you using a sweet, smoky, or spicy paprika, or are there times that you choose to use different ones?
That's a great question. I really it's one of those things yet again. There's some things that I feel very strongly and specifically about in making this recipe, but when it comes to the paprika, I do just use what's on hand. I've used smoked paprika. I don't prefer it as much. And I think that's something I've only done when that's like what's available to me. But I generally just use probably not a sweeter paprika, but your standard paprika, I would say, doesn't have to be anything in particular, which is what's nice about this is like, you don't need to be too particular. Just kind of what you have on hand works. So.
All right. Thank you, Marissa. And Donna, we'd love for you to share your amazing culinary experiences. I've been the beneficiary of some of these. Donna will randomly leave things at my house for me to eat, and it is always amazing.
Well, I love to cook, and cooking for not a big family anymore. I always end up making more than I can eat. So I just kind of pass it around. But my polenta and tomato sauce is a little different than everybody else's, but a little bit the same too. Okay, the polenta slide, please. Okay, so I usually started with flint or flour corn, whatever I grew, depending on what they gave me to grow and I ended up with for the season. So it could be just about anything. And I used a hand grain mill. And originally I used like a Corona, but then I got a Demont, which has like a 12-inch flywheel. And I did it in 2 steps. First, I coarse cracked the grain, and then I took and threw it back in again, cranked down that thing to a flour and ran it through again. And when I had it to the point where I liked it, sometimes I even ran it a 3rd time just because it's so much easier to do it in smaller steps. You're not like, killing yourself. It's like you're doing it 3 times, but you end up using the same amount of time doing it as if you had just done it really, really hard once. So I grind me, and then when I'm done grinding it, I pour boiling water over it and let it sit for an hour. The other way to do it is just go buy some cornmeal, and nice coarse cornmeal, and 3 cups of water, a little bit of salt, as much as you want of onion, garlic, or pepper, and some oil. Then I bring my water up to a boil and pour it over the stuff that's been sitting for an hour. And then just like work it in with a spoon usually a wooden spoon, just breaking it up. Sometimes a whisk if it's, a little bit too clumpy. And when it's finally nice and thick and it's sucked up all that water, I put it aside to cool. So polenta can be served any number of ways. It can just be like a cornmeal mush, which makes it, breakfast if you want to have it with syrup and, milk or something. It can be sliced and served in chunks, or I like to slice it and brown it in butter, or my favorite way to do it is to drop little quarter-sized dollops in hot butter and just brown them on two sides. And then you have almost like a cornmeal pasta. And you cover that with tomato sauce and grated cheese and eat it. And so now the next one for my tomato sauce. Okay, so when I make tomato sauce, for a long time, I was growing tomatoes for seed. So I did not want to throw those seeds into my sauce. So I started using a tomato pureer. And what that does is it separates the seeds and skins out one end, and the puree comes out the bottom of it and into a pan. And I used a mix of paste tomatoes. And of course, for me, that meant separating, taking it apart, cleaning it really well, making sure I got one variety done before I moved on to another. But if you don't care, you just run everything through. And, if you don't need to be really careful about separating your varieties, you kind of know where one stops and the next one begins. And a lot of times I do it with color, so that I'll use a red one and then a yellow one and then another red one and then a pink one. And that's just when I'm keeping the seed for myself, not when I'm commercially selling the seed. And when the puree first comes out, it's going to be pinkish rather than red. So at that point, I started boiling, and it'll boil down. And then there's a point at which the scent changes and the color changes as well. It starts smelling more saucy and less raw tomatoey. And at that point, when it turns from the pink to the red, that's when I run my onion, garlic, pepper, basil, oregano through a food processor. See, I do it the modern way. And then I dump all that into my sauce and let it simmer for another couple hours until it's sweet and fragrant. And of course, you can use anything you want. If you want to use rosemary, if you want to use bay, if you want to add parsley, anything goes at this point. Some people add beets and carrots and all sorts of crazy things to it, but I stick. And then I add an oil or butter. My mother-in-law showed me to make butter sauce, where you add a stick of butter to every quart of sauce, and it actually makes it really sweet and kind of a nifty taste. But olive oil is traditional. And then you just simmer it until you think it's ready. And at that point, for years, I worked on canning it and trying to keep it as hot as possible and boiling water baths and all these, canned. But then probably at best, I got a 25% blow up rate. And those are the ones that you go in there and you thunk them on the top of the jar. And it's like, yeah, that one fermented too, because you just can't keep this large basket of tomato sauce boiling and at the correct temperature. So now I just let it chill out a little bit, and I pack it in Ziploc bags and pop it in the freezer. Kind of cheating, but it's 100%. I never lose any, unless of course the freezer breaks down, and then you eat a lot of tomato sauce real quickly. And that's my take. And of course, then you put it up over your polenta and add your Parmesan Romano cheese grated and enjoy it. As for leftovers, leftover polenta is easy to keep. The leftover tomato sauce, it's always tomorrow's dinner. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. There's a question from Anthony about recommendations for large-scale grinding mills. Donna, do you have any experience in that, or do any of our other presenters have that?
I personally use my KitchenAid with the pureer, which they don't sell anymore. They've changed their whole tomato pureer setup to a two-step thing where first you grind it and then the first step is to grind it and the second step is to puree it, which is kind of foolish. But when I was growing commercial seed, I set X amount, there was a line in the sand. Okay, this is all the sauce I am going to make. And after that point, I just slopped what I referred to as slopping out tomatoes. And I would take the tomato, which was round, and I would just open it up and layer it to ferment the seed. But I've never used a large scale. I'm sure they're out there.
I think Anthony was referring to corn grinding mills.
Oh, corn mill, the electric mill. I did have an electric mill, but at the time I didn't pay that extra $30, I think it was, to get the little wider entry for the grain. And so I've always ground it by hand, but found that when I changed to that Demont, which is a big flywheel, it made it a lot easier. But there's commercial grain mills, there's grist mills, big time is, the commercial grist mills. But yes, there's, of course, grinding equipment for any size that you want to do.
So Marissa or Sharon, do either of you have experience or know of other folks that are grinding corn on a large scale?
Not at a large scale as you would think. I was just kind of chuckling to myself because where I get a lot of my corn ground is in the classroom. If I go and I talk to a summer camp kids, or if I go to a school and doing an outreach there, and I have them grind corn, and I walk out of there and I have like quite a few bags of ground corn when they're done, because they'd love to do it. So if you can get an army of kids working on it, you'll have a lot of really good ground corn for yourself. But no, I don't know, and that's because I personally probably wouldn't have a reason to do that. So I've never really investigated in that.
Well, I know if you're in central Maine, the Maine Grain Alliance, originally they took in grains from people to grind in large batches, and whether or not they still do it, I don't know. You could have a custom ground.
I think our closest mill is over in Rhode Island, here, from where I live in New London. And I'm not sure if they will grind, if they have ground cornmeal or not. Oh, yes, they do. They do grind cornmeal there, but I don't know if they would do it for anybody except for themselves, because that's what they do, is they sell cornmeal there. But that's one thing you could do, is to see if you got a grist mill nearby.
Yes, there's definitely custom grinders around.
Yeah.
I would welcome Michelle Michio to come, and I'm using my Maine French, which I know is incorrect, to come off mic. I noticed you're sharing some things in the chat, and I'd love to hear your experience. Sounds like you're making cornmeal and from another tradition.
You mean when I talked about the drill attachment for the manual mills, or
Yeah, well, the crumb,
get my maíz.
yeah.
So like I'm from Puerto Rico, and the cornmeal is something that we have for breakfast. I mean, every day, but we normally have it like when we're processing the cornmeal, like we kind of want to beat it until it gets really almost, like when you over mash potatoes. So it's a little bit like that. But I know that my household is kind of mixed Afro-Caribbean ancestry. Like, I'm from Puerto Rico, my housemate is from Jamaica. So their preparation is a little bit different, whether you add cream or not. Anyways, what I was going to say was, we have it just as a porridge, just like, and when one way or another, the way our ancestors did it. But then once it solidifies, we'll slice it and fry it so that you can have the same dish throughout, multiple meals with one singular preparation. That was it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Hannah points that grains store better whole and grind only for immediate use. So talking about
Absolutely. That was always my method. If I made too much, okay, so I made polenta and, cornbread at the same time, but I always used it up. And because it does, any grain, any nut, once ground, the oils in it begin to go bad immediately.
Is there anything that our panelists would like to add or thoughts from hearing other folks present?
I just have to say that I am so curious about this butter sauce, Donna. I did not grow up eating a lot of butter because my mom just cooked everything in
Right.
olive oil, and I'm fascinated by that. And I feel like I have to try it.
Well, for a long time, I was making butter.
Oh wow.
So, from fresh
Ooh.
cow milk. So it was kind of like the thing that was closest. And, so I used it in all sorts of things, and I still kind of lean that way. But a really good butter in a tomato sauce, it just changes it.
Mm.
A totally different experience.
We have a question from Mandy asking, I hear there are a lot of lump warnings. How stubborn are these lumps?
Yeah, they're stubborn, but so.
Yeah. Like
So,
not the worst. It's sometimes you get a little clump and it's like
the texture.
yeah, it's like a little chunk.
You can use a metal whisk and just kind of work at it.
Yeah,
It'll
it does.
separate.
A whisk
It's
works.
fine. Yeah,
But embrace your lumps.
Yeah.
yeah, sure. Why not?
And Michelle adds a hint, some experience in the chat about grinding, biggest challenge, keeping everything cool. And I wanted to, before we head to break, which we're just about to do, I wanted to reflect, Rebecca offered an observation about how for some reason in Northern Italy, the process of using corn and ashing it or nixtamalizing it had not been transferred. And there's a sort of a takeaway from that is the type of relationship that the person or people who brought corn to different parts of Europe. If you're not in relationship with the people that are sharing that food tradition with you, you're not going to learn what they were doing. So if you're violently oppressing them, they're not going to teach you anything, or you're not going to be paying attention. So that's when we look at like where the tradition is shared and how it is shared. One thing to reflect is that Christopher Columbus died in 1504. So when we talk about cornmeal getting to Italy, it was long after Columbus had passed away. So where oftentimes the northern flint corn is from the interspace of folks being exposed to the flint corns of New England, not the softer corn or dense from the Central American tribes or communities. So that is a sort of a different pathway than, so Columbus noticed something, but obviously is seeing a tradition that folks who are on Portuguese cod ships and fishing ships, which were, had sailors from all these different places in Italy, which are really like at that point, there wasn't really an Italy, there was more like city-states, the Triantano and very different places where people were basically sailors and were returning home with traditions or seed, but had obviously not actually had the how do you make this shared with them in that experience 50 years later.
Well, you know what? I bet you they weren't. I bet you they just weren't paying attention, or if they were, maybe they thought that the method was like ew, Maybe they went. That's something they just wouldn't do back in Italy, with the ash and everything. So, it's hard to know, though, isn't it?
It's hard to know. I mean, I think some of the tradition is also some of this mixtamalizing was occurring with the storage of the corn at the top of the lodge or building, where the smoke from the wood fire was actually preserving the kernels and keeping them from sprouting and rotting and keeping bugs and stuff out of them and getting this like basically smoke char coating on the kernels as they're at the top of the lodge. And so just not being observing and not being in part of that culture, not seeing that and taking it away, we didn't get that tradition. So that's like you missed the details apparently, and then it bit us in the butt. Hannah asks, I wonder if there are any ancestral recipes involving fermenting the meal after adding water and before cooking? And Michelle answers, you mean like chichi? I don't know if I'm chicha. Does
I'm
anyone?
sure it happens in warmer climates very easily.
That may be also some traditions related to the type of corn. When we're talking about this, a lot of times folks are wondering about this ratio of water versus cornmeal. And oftentimes the cornmeal we're getting in the store is actually a dent corn and is not a flint corn or a flour corn, which is like a completely
Yeah,
different
yeah.
ratio. So oftentimes the reason why these things differ is because people are using very different types of corn. So that's where the water ratio, will matter whether you're using flour or flint or dent or a mixture of those.
Corn.
It's corn is not one thing, as I've learned. Well, we're going to take a break for about 3 minutes. Let's take a little water break, a little stretch break. We're going to come back and folks we're going to learning about the origins and how to seed save all this stuff. And we'll take it from there. So we're going to take a little break. Okay, that was a quick 3 minutes. But we're coming back, folks, and this second half is where our presenters are going to share with us the origins of all these different ingredients that we call polenta, because it's not just about corn or tomatoes, as they're going to share. There's a lot of other things in there. And Donna is also going to give us a brief tutorial. There's so much I'm sure that she could share about seed saving for ourselves, these ingredients of polenta. So how we can, do basically seed save the whole dish potentially, or at least versions thereof. And we know that Sharon is going to share first with the origins of all the things that go into this dish, or these things we call polenta and tomato sauce. Sharon, you are muted.
Sorry.
No worries. Go ahead.
Alrighty. So Melissa and I, for this project, we decided that we would look and see the origins of all these different items that go into this dish that we're doing, the polenta with the tomato sauce. And we came up with 8 basic items. And so we split the task in half, and I've done 4 of them, and Marissa has done another 4. So the first one that I went into is basil. And I think we're all probably pretty familiar with basil and the way it tastes. Maybe not, but basil is used in a lot of different dishes. And I think probably the most common one is the one pictured right there, that variety of basil. And they think it originated in Africa, and it was eventually domesticated in India, and then eventually introduced into the Americas in the 17th century by way of the English. Now, when I go into a seed catalog, and oh boy, we're getting our seed catalogs now, right? Basil, I counted 13 different basil varieties in just one seed catalog, basic basil varieties. So there's quite a few varieties. And there are even some that are very hardy, that grow like a perennial. I know my neighbor had some purple basil that used to come back year after year, and it even got to be kind of invasive. So I also, on these slides, I've included a picture of what each plant, after it's flowered and the flowers have dried, what it looks like, and the little seeds, that come off of the little flowers after they've dried up. So the leaves are used fresh or dried to flavor meats, fish, salads, and sauces. And basil tea is also a stimulant. And I do believe basil makes a great pesto. Next slide, please. Oregano. So we're going to put a little oregano in our sauce in that recipe. And oregano is native to the hills of the Mediterranean countries and Western Asia, and has naturalized in parts of Mexico and United States. Oregano has been long used as an essential ingredient in Mediterranean cooking, and is widely used to season many foods. In fact, I have some oregano right now growing in the house. It's Greek oregano. It's a really hardy kind of oregano, and it has a very rich flavor to it, and a very rich smell to it. There are actually many varieties of oregano as well. You can see in these pictures where somebody has taken their plants and hung them upside down and drying out the flowered parts, and then removing the seeds there at the top. Next slide. Oh, this was fascinating. Onions. Of course, onion is an allium, and you can find onions all over the world. And it is one of the they think it originated in Asia, from where it spread across the entire world. And onions were grown in ancient Egypt thousands of years ago, and in India and China thousands of years ago, as well as Samaria. And wild, quote unquote, wild onions are found in North America, as well as Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. In fact, I have some what I think are wild onions growing through my lawn at my house that I eat in the spring. They may be a different kind of an allium, but they taste oniony to me. So I always call them the little wild onions that come up. Onions have a beautiful flower when they do flower. It's a nice round ball. It's very impressive. And then those are dried, and then you can get the seeds. The seeds come forth from that blossom, like you see on the top left-hand side. Alrighty, next slide. And then here, finally, we have corn. And, corn, you could have another conference just on corn. It's a big subject. It's a large subject. Anyway, scientists believe, and that's so funny, scientists believe, and I'm thinking, well, indigenous people know that corn probably was started and was developed in Mexico at least 7,000 years ago. That's what the scientists feel. And it was started from a wild grass called teosinte. And I have a little, in that little tiny picture on the right-hand side up at the top, there's a little teosinte there that is next to the next stage of the development of corn, and then the next stage of the corn food developed as we use it today. So it just came from like little grassy kind of a thing, and it was bred and bred until we get to where we are today. Now, corn, the origins of corn, you know, depending upon which tribe that you talk to, in our oral traditions, we are taught. In my tribe, we were taught that the corn came to us by the crow. The crow carried the corn in its beak from the southwest and came and delivered it to us. Here in the Northeast, corn agriculture isn't really that old in comparison to other parts of the country, but continents. But once we did start to use corn, that settled us down a little bit. You know, agriculture kind of keeps you in a certain spot. And and became part of our daily lives and part of our ceremony and part of our daily spiritual lives. So there's a lot to that subject as well. But we're looking at origins right now. And as Indian people migrated north, as our people did, the Pequot people, of which Mohegan were a part of, they are actually part of the Lenape people and the Delaware people. And back not too long ago, probably back in the 1500s at some point, they moved from where they were and they moved up next to the Iroquois people up in that area in the Hudson River Valley. And then they pressed down and moved down here into Connecticut, into this area down here. And of course, the Mohegan, Mohegan, not to be confused with Mohican, Mohican. They're two different peoples. But so it's the oral history bears that out, and we brought the corn down with us, along with us. So as a superfood, corn is one of the basic grains used in many cultures worldwide. And as we know, the big corporations got a hold of corn and fooled with it, unfortunately. But corn is also processed into a multitude of food and, of course, industrial products, including starch, sweeteners, corn oil, and beverage, and industrial alcohols. So corn is really one of cornerstones, not just of the native cultural and traditional existence, but really of the world. It's come a long way. So anyways, I think that's what I have as far as my origins go.
Thank you, Sharon. Marissa, do you want to jump in with your section?
Yeah, let's get it. Thank you so much for that, Sharon. So I guess moving from one heavy hitter of corn to the next big heavy hitter, I'm going to start out with tomatoes. So tomatoes, it's thought were originated in the Andes of Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador, and then made their way to Central America and Mexico about 2,000 years ago. It's thought that the domestication process began 7,000 years ago, and that wild cherry-sized tomatoes developed on their own without any human intervention about 80,000 years ago. So tomatoes were brought to Seville in the 16th century, Spain. Often were seen and used as an ornamental, and they had this sort of convoluted journey of making their way to North America rather than from South and Central America, from Europe to North America. As European colonizers and immigrants settled, took over these lands, they brought tomatoes with them from there. It was still for a very long time in European cultures seen as an ornamental, but also an herbal, a poison, an aphrodisiac. It took until the 1700s for it to become a common culinary ingredient. Some of the first recordings we see in North America of tomato plantings, where Thomas Jefferson had them in his garden in 1781. There was a French refugee in Santo Domingo who brought them over to Philadelphia in 1789, and then there was an Italian painter who brought them over to Salem, Massachusetts in 1802. So we see also the first, some of what we think are the first tomato sauce recipes. Brought this can of sauce for a little quick visual. See some of the first published versions of that around 1692. And there was a long belief amongst Europeans that tomatoes were poisonous because they're in the nightshade family. And there also is the situation of wealthy Europeans eating their tomato dishes off of very lead heavy pewter plates, and the acid in the tomatoes leached the lead out from these plates and made people very sick. So tomatoes became more popular in common culinary use in the 19th and 20th centuries as there was better processes for transport, storage, and preservation. And then Italian immigrants were also very prominent proponents of tomatoes as a way to continue connecting with their culture, since tomatoes had become so strong there. And we see Heinz ketchup being released in 1876, Campbell's tomato soup in 1897. Next slide, please. Quick bit on tomato vernacular because words are super fun. The name tomato is thought to derive from tomato, the indigenous Nahuatl name, Nahuatl being the language spoken by the indigenous peoples of Mexico. In 1550s, around then in Italy, it was called the love apple, or Poma peruviana, referring to its Peruvian origins. Poma de oro, mala aurea, apple of gold, which indicates with a little wild specimen visualized there, the apple of gold makes us believe that some of the first wild varieties were a yellow or orange color rather than red, and its association with poison earned tomatoes the title wolf peach as well. Next slide, please. So we'll keep going with nightshades and talk about peppers, which are native to South and Central America, certain regions of Southern North America, with remains being found as far back as 9,000 to the date back as far as 9,000 to 7,000 BCE in the Mexican Valley of Tihuacan. There are 26 known wild species and 5 domesticated. Peppers domesticated from a small red pea-sized fruit, and they have this very clever trick in their propagation of somehow evolving in such a way that their capsaicin they had capsaicin in them, so mammals would not want to carry that because they would say, spicy, but birds cannot taste capsaicin, the component that makes pepper spicy. So these fruits were spread by birds, allowing them to travel much greater distances than they could had they just been transported by mammals. Just a nifty little trick on the part of the peppers. So it's believed that Christopher Columbus brought first specimens of peppers to Spain, where they made their way to Italy and then spread throughout Europe. Then Portuguese settlers carried peppers from Brazil to India, where from there they spread to Asia and Africa. And it's thought that generally peppers made their way from Africa to the United States, to North America, as they became a really important part of the diets of West African people, who then carried these seeds with them along the transatlantic slave trade, and it made so that crop took root in the American South in their gardens, and that is how then that crop was introduced around here. There's also the breeding of sweet peppers, happened big time in Hungary in the 1800s for the classic Hungarian paprika. They were really fond of that, bred out a lot of the spice as a result. Next slide, please. Okay, We have a very ancient crop and one of my favorites, garlic. It's speculated to have been used as far back as 10,000 years ago. We see it referenced in Egyptian cultures, Indian cultures, Babylonians, Chinese cultures, as far as thousands of years ago. Very, very old crop, and it's thought to have its wild ancestors in Central Asia. Might have had even greater of a wild range than it does now, because we see those wild specimens there. It's Allium longicuspis, which the Allium sativum now grows from, though the longicuspis is sterile, so it's thought that there's a further wild ancestor we do not know about. So from Central Asia, garlic traveled to India, Egypt, Pakistan, and then from there to Europe, where French, Spanish, and Portuguese folks brought this plant to North America in the 17th century. However, there is a North American or native North American species of garlic that had been long used in this region. So we see some of the first recorded mentions of there being a difference between soft neck and hard neck in European cultivation about 1,000 years ago. Garlic reproduces sexually in the wild, but humans have domesticated it to be an asexual crop, meaning we propagate it generally clonally from the cloves that we replant, and human-bred sexual reproduction started to emerge in the 1980s as once the Soviet Union fell, a lot of old silk trade routes opened back up, and so scientists went to go and explore to see what other garlic species that they might be able to find there. And cultivation of garlic was not that popular until the mid-20th century in the United States, as there were a lot of immigrants coming in from different parts of Europe who were championing garlic against the scorn that English folks or folks with English ancestry had, because it was kind of a scorned crop there. Quick bit more of garlic history in the next slide, please. So garlic was seen as a medicine, a magic, an aphrodisiac. It's been referenced in many, many ancient and important texts. In Egypt, it was worshipped as a god, very revered, placed in tombs. However, I thought this was a fascinating fact that garlic was used as currency to, not as well as currency in some ways, but it was used in one way to pay the slaves who were building the pyramids of Egypt. And there was a slave revolt one year when there's a garlic crop failure because no one had their garlic. Very bad. In Greece and Rome, garlic was seen as a source of strength for warriors and athletes, though there were some temples you couldn't even enter if you didn't pass a garlic breath test. And it was seen too as a food of commoners in India. So there's kind of this, you see this fraught relationship of like garlic being in many places having this high esteem, yet also to consume it, not as much high esteem. Kind of a little dichotomy happening in England, where I mentioned it was not so beloved. Garlic breath made girls unworthy of being courted. Ouch. So they became, yeah, I should move on to olives. We're gonna go there next, finish up with that. So olives, their origin is a little unclear. It was hard to find anything that wasn't super vague about this, but it's thought very generally Middle East, Mediterranean basin, maybe Iran, Turkestan, Greece, Italy, Egypt, Israel, Turkey. There are many thoughts to where olives could have originated, but they domesticated about 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, and they likely furthered their spread alongside figs, dates, and grapes as grafting practices emerged and made for easier propagation. And it's thought that olive oil production began in 4000 BCE. We see remains in a Chalcolithic site in Israel of that, being woven through woven mats. Olive oil was a currency, a fuel, a pesticide, perfume, lotion, detergent, contraceptive, preservative. Homer called it liquid gold because it was so many things to people and used for so much. And production of olive oil became semi-industrialized in Rome from 200 BCE to 200 CE, expanded even further in the 1700s. And now we see garlic or olive oil production happening in different parts of North and South and Central America, more towards the beginning of the 19th century. And I believe that is it for that.
Thank you, Marissa. We have a couple observations. Michelle offers that they use powdered hot peppers as rodent deterrent in chicken feed, which is awesome.
And birdseed.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Any other questions or folks have? Either want to come off mute or put in the chat before we move on to seed saving? All right. Sounds like we're okay. Well, this next part is Donna is going to share her seed saving experience about how can we save these seeds or seeds of these varieties and kind of perpetuate everything we want to make from polenta or tomato sauce here in the Northeast, if possible.
This is going to be a really, really quick overview of saving the seeds because, of course, in the amount of time I have running through 8 different crops, there's just no way I could really tell you how to do it, but it'll make basic sense. Okay, can I have that next slide, please? All right, a few terms. Open pollinated is theoretically a stable variety, which will come true from seed if it's isolated from other plants of the same species. And I say theoretical is if indeed you are starting with a clean variety. And there's only one way to find that out, and that's to grow it. A hybrid are varieties which are, again, theoretical. 2 different varieties or more crossed to create a third. Some people say you can grow out a hybrid and it's exactly the same as others. And then the different forms of pollination, wind pollination, where the wind carries the pollen to fertilize the flowers, insect pollination, where the pollinating insects do the job of carrying the pollen from flower to flower, plant to plant. Self-pollination is when both the male and the female flower parts are within the blossom, and fertilization often takes place before the flower even opens. Isolation is the distance needed between plants of the same species or varieties to keep them from crossing. And fermentation, which is mostly tomatoes, it breaks down the germination inhibitors, and it also helps keep seed-borne diseases down. Next, please. Okay, just basic, familiarize yourself with the parts of the flower and their functions. You've got the stamen, which is the pollen carrier, and the pistil, which is receives the pollen and creates the fruit and seed inside of itself. The rest of it is just the exterior. The perianth is the exterior of the flower, as you know the flower to look like. Okay, next, please. All right, corn, it's a big one, and Heron suggested that I talk a little bit about planting and growing the corn as well as saving the seed, which I suppose is the first step to saving your seed. And there are many different types of corn. There's flint corn, there's flour corn, there's dent corn, which is many of your sweet corn, there's pod corn, popcorn, and I'm sure there's many others as well. Corn originally was the word for grain. So every grain had its corn. There was barley corn and wheat corn, and it just meant the seed of. With corn, you're going to have to plant your seed when the soil has warmed over 60 degrees and is no longer waterlogged, hopefully. It's sometimes a picky pollinator, a picky germinator, but I found it's pretty good once you're warm. Corn loves fertile soil, so it's called the SUV of vegetables, in that it really, really wants to be fed well to grow well. And I always thin my plants to 12 inches apart, but I'm a big thinner of everything. Next, please. Okay. Corn is wind pollinated, meaning the wind releases the pollen from the tassels at the top of the plant and moves it down to the silks, which are going to become your ear of corn. Each strand of pollinated corn silk becomes a kernel of corn on the cob. Your corn needs to be isolated from other corn varieties from a distance of 500 feet to maybe miles, depending on your barriers and the lay of your land and just how far that pollen is going to be. Sometimes it's caught up into the jet stream and brought back down thousands of miles away. It's one of the harder of all of these things that I'm glancing over for seed saving. Corn is the singularly most picky to grow seed for. Next, please. Okay, in order to grow your own corn seed, you're going to need to hand pollinate it to make sure that no other corn will pollinate your silks. So it needs an isolation distance, as I said, anywhere from 500 feet up to miles and hundreds of miles. To hand pollinate corn, you have to choose your most vigorous and strongest looking plants and an open pollinated variety, of course. And when the ears start to develop the silk, you'll need to cover them to assure against random pollination. So there are muslin bags, there are waxed bags, there are glassine bags. I have a picture over here, and I couldn't really find a picture of corn bags, so I used millet. And when the tassels have begun to shed their pollen, you can go up to the tassel and just flick it. And you'll see this little puff, 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 puff come down. You're like, okay, that's ready to go. So then you carefully cut the entire tassel, the little pieces of the tassel, and rub it all, uncover your silks, of course, and rub it all over your silks. And it's always a good idea to repeat this, 2, 3, 4 days in a row, just to make sure that every one of those little silks has been pollinated, and therefore you'll have a nice full cob of corn. And when you're done pollinating, you have to cover your corn ear back up, cover those silks back up and isolate them. And you have to leave that cover on the silks until the silks actually turn brown, which if you've grown corn, you know that's how you tell whether they're ripe. At that point, you can take the cover off of it and let it ripen, because you want to have as much air circulation as possible for your seed to ripen. Next. Okay, at harvest, once the silks have turned brown, the ears may be uncovered. Leave the ears on the stalks until the wrapper is brown and dry and the kernels are hard. Again, like with the grains they were talking about this morning, you push your thumbnail into that corn and you want it to be as dry as possible and no milk. And there's different stages, but the crunchier the better, and the longer you can leave that on. Unfortunately, in the Northeast, one of our biggest problems is that our autumns have dew at either end and become more rainy. So your mornings are dewy for longer, your evenings become dewy earlier, and there's more rain. So once it's dry, you can snap that corn off, peel back your ears, and then hang it somewhere to continue drying for a while, or put it in a paper bag to continue drying. And then once that seed is like hard, then you can remove it from the cob. You might want to dry it one more time at that point, just to make sure, because they do store a lot of moisture. And at that point, you can put it in a cool, dry place. I know this has been really quick and really an overview, but it's the basics. Okay, tomatoes. Tomatoes are, again, in theory, self-pollinating and have perfect flowers. In modern variety, this is true. but many open pollinated tomato varieties have exerted stigma, which you'll see down at the bottom. There's a little thingy sticking out of it, and that can cross pollinate. And more often than not, you're going to see them in those big double gummy tomatoes, like the Brandywines and I think some of the Cherokees can be like really convoluted, and they'll have a double blossom, and that double blossom is more often inclined to outcross. You need to pick an open pollinated variety, of course, and isolated about 20 to 50 feet from other varieties. Other people grow them side by side, and sometimes they cross and sometimes they don't. And if, it's up to you how much of a chance or whether you want it to go rogue or not. You start your seed 6 to 8 weeks early and transplant into fertile growing medium. I don't put out my plants until the weather warms a lot, because when you put them out too early, it seems like they just get stagnant or yellow. And so I let them wait. I had a greenhouse, so that made life a lot easier. And just hang out in there until it's nice and cozy and warm outside, and then you plant them in. I planted my plants 3 feet apart. They need to be staked, tied, and pruned to a central leader, thereby making less plant matter to compete with the ripening fruit. Next, please. Okay, tomatoes need fermentation to break down that little ball of gel around every seed, which inhibits germination, and the fermentation also will help with disease resistance. And you can see a little bit of our faces are kind of blocking my tomato pureer, which I first started to use because I was growing seed and I didn't want to throw that seed into a tomato sauce, so I started pureeing it. And then, as I said in my recipe, you break it down from there. You pick a fully ripe fruit from healthy plants, cut the fruit in half and scoop out the seeds, and the old Italian grandmother, on paper towel, it works. It's fine. Otherwise, you want to ferment it. And the way I ferment mine was in airtight containers. Other people allow the air in, but I find that if I didn't use airtight buckets or a container or something, it draws the fruit flies, and then you're fishing fruit flies out of your seed. So it, depending on the temperature, it's 2 to 3 days. And at that point, there's like a white film and they smell kind of funky. And you fill your container with water, and the good seeds will sink down to the bottom, and the fruit skins and fruit itself will rise up to the top, and then you carefully pour off or skim off the stuff, and down there in the bottom is your excellent tomato seed. And if you lose a little bit of your tomato seed, there's still some in the top. Oftentimes it's because that seed is not ripe. So the stuff that's sitting there at the bottom, and you'll see it, and you rinse your seed 3 or 4 times, let it dry, break up your clumps. And one thing I found is when I was doing it on a big scale, I found that if I used metal screens when you were breaking up your clumps of tomato seeds, because they're wet, so they clump together, is that the seeds started just flying everywhere. They were bouncing around on those metal screens and just started flying everywhere. So the fiberglass screens, they don't bounce as much, and you can just rub all the little balls of tomato seed into ones of, and because it's just such a pain if you're doing seeds, individual seeds, to have 3 or 4 seeds or 5 seeds in a clump, and then you have to break up every little clump as you plant. And you need to rinse your seeds and fully dry them, then again, store in a cool, dry place. Okay, that's tomatoes. Next. Okay, peppers. Peppers are easy. You just, again, go for your open pollinated variety. And always, when you're growing seed, make sure that you have a variety that will ripen and is adapted to the region that you're growing in. In the Northeast, you want your shorter season peppers. You get a pepper that's like from Mexico or something. And yes, you might get green fruit, but what you want to save your pepper seed are red, ripe fruits. And all peppers turn some shade of red. The yellow ones turn orangey, the brown ones turn bricky, the green ones turn red. There's always red involved, and that's when they're ripe. And at that point, you cut your pepper in half, open it up, and take out that little ball of seed that's attached to the stem, break them off, dry them on a screen, and it's as easy as that. Once they're dry, they're dry. They are self-pollinating, but still separate your varieties by 50 feet because, again, it's theoretical, and hot peppers are dominant. So if you don't have a good distance and you're growing sweet and hot, the hots will beat off the sweets, and you'll end up with a hotter variety. And then once your seeds are dry, and you can hear your seeds that are dry, and you can also, I learned to hear my unripe seeds on the screen because they sound hollow. So you'll be like moving them around on the screen. You'll hear one that sounds hollow, and you just remove those, and just increases your germination. And store your seed in a cool, dry place as usual. Okay, next, onions. Onions are a biennial, meaning the bulb grows one season. You pick your best, you have to overwinter them, replant them the following spring, which is when they're going to go to seed. As always, you start with an open-pollinated variety. I start my seed like 6 to 8 weeks early. Some people grow their onion seedlings for much longer. But I find that if you try and plant them too early, as with everything, they just go dormant and get waterlogged. But I'm dealing with central Maine, so spring rains are a very important part of the whole thing, because you want things to dry off where they can kind of get mucky, especially the land I was growing in had clay subsoil and tended to retain water. Okay, when your onions are finished, the tops fall over. So at that point, when they're kind of yellowed and the tops are folded over, I take them and I flip them upside down and cure the roots, then rip off the roots, flip them back on their bottoms, and let that top cure before cutting them off, maybe a ½ inch above the onion itself, just so that you're not cutting into the onion. You can trim your tops and roots, and you cure them. And in a perfect season, field curing is always the best, but often you have to bring them in someplace if it's a wet autumn and let them dry, because then they'll keep through the winter much better. Then separate your very best onions in the shape that you want, the color that you want, the size that you want, and set them aside to replant in the spring when your ground is ready. Next, please. Okay, in the spring, replant your best overwintered onions that haven't rotted. And you're going to have a certain amount of rot, but they'll be growing, the green will come out of them. And when the weather moderates and the ground is friable, and again, in where I was growing, the friable was the hardest part because of the waterlog. And you don't want them out there when it's too cold. Give them a chance to warm up a little bit. The replanted onion will grow a tall flower stalk, and like tall, 3.5 feet tall, with a large blossom, which will be, many varieties have a good 3 to 4 inch blossom. And will need staking just to keep it from falling over in wind and rain, and because the seed is so heavy. And pollinators just love those onion flowers, and they just think they're wonderful. So you have to have like one variety, because even one variety of allium, because onions and leeks, I don't know, they may or may not cross with chives and all of those, but I just think it's a good idea just to have one. And then let that seed dry until that white flower head is now brown. And if you walk up to it and you like flick it or shake it lightly, you'll see seeds dropping everywhere. And that's when you carefully cut your flower head into a paper bag and let it dry a little more. And then you could just shake the seeds or rub the seeds out of the blossoms, and, you know, fan winnow or breath winnow, where you're just holding it in the wind and you drop your seed and the chaff flies away. If it's just for you, you don't, you know, if there's a little bit of chaff in there, it's okay, because you're just planting it again the next year. Okay, again, make sure they're fully dry, and that's a big one. And onion seed have a particularly short lifespan, and you can get 2 and maybe 3 years out of onion seed, but for the most part, your onions will last. Your best germination is going to be your next year. So, you know, you might get a second year out of it. A lot of times people put them in the freezer to get a bit longer out of them, but they're pretty short-lived. Okay, next. Garlic. Oh, garlic doesn't really have seed, but it's propagated by the cloves, which are the clones of the plant. So you harvest your garlic in usually mid-July, and you plant it again it's gotten later and later, but originally it was early October. Now it tends to run towards mid to late October. You dig your garlic in the summer when the plants begin to brown, and before your cloves start splitting and they're nice tight, the paper's nice and tight around them. And then you again replant in the autumn when it's cooled down enough that they have time to just set a few roots, much like a daffodil, which is the same base family. Next, please. Basil. Now, I have here, it says that basil flowers are self-fertile, but they're also insect pollinated. So I kind of changed that after. There's some places say that they're self-fertile, other places say that they're insect pollinated. So I'm going with insect pollinated just to make sure that you're doing it right. So again, one open pollinated variety, unless you have a huge isolation distance of 150 or more feet, depending on how clean you want it. And you choose a basil, which is open pollinated, of course, direct seed into warm soil, or start plants like 4 weeks early. They will go from direct seed to blossom in a season. But if you start your X number of plants, 20 plants or whatever, early, your chances of getting good ripe seed are much higher. Allow your flowers to ripen on the stem until they're dry. And when you hit them, when you crumble them a little, the seeds fall into your palm and you're like, yeah, there's my seed, nice and dry. Then you carefully cut the stems into a paper bag and allow it to dry a little more, and then rub your blossoms to release the seed. But basil blossoms are a little sharp. So when you're rubbing your flowers, unless you have cast iron hands, like a lot of times by the end of the growing season, I do, they might be a little bit sharp on your hands. Next, please. Is oregano. Oregano is a perennial, but it will blossom and set seed the first year. The seeds are so tiny. So in order to start your plants, I start them like 8 weeks before planting. in a good fertile growing medium, and just make a little tiny well on the surface and sprinkle your seed in there and barely cover it and tamp it down. If you have a gentle enough watering can, you can gently water them, otherwise soak them from below and let them pull up. The seedlings will be tiny, 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 just little tiny things, of course, relative because there's a tiny seed, and it'll be a little while before you can transplant them out into their own little space. And then once they're strong and hardy and have a good stem, then you can plant them into the garden, and then they're pretty rugged. And of course, again, they are Mediterranean. They are, you know, Greek or Mediterranean are usually the two there are, and they're radically different flavors. And they do want that soil to be warm. Next slide, please. Okay, pollinators large and small flock to the blossoms of oregano. And it's a great place to learn about the bees that are in your area. At one time, I counted 10 different pollinators, from the teeny weeny little bee to the I never saw bumblebees on it, but I did see a lot of the mason bees, and of course the honeybees and everything in between. And it was a place that I took children to learn about bees, especially ones who were afraid of bees in the garden. And, you know, I can't stand a kid that's like, oh my God, it's a bee, it's a bee. And they, you know, it's like, come here. And we would go over to the oregano, and I'd say, see these little mason bees? See how busy they are? They don't care if you're there or not. Look, you can pat them. And mason bees are so into the oregano blossoms that you can actually just pat them. And I've had a few kids overcome fear of bees, but that usually only lasts until they step on the ones in the white clover in the autumn that are too slow to get out of your way. And I always get stung a couple times by stomping on them, and then I feel bad, like, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. All right, then harvest the blossoms when they are dry. And again, you know, crumble a blossom or two and see if the seeds are falling out into your hand. That's how you know. And just cut the tops into a paper bag, and then let them fully dry, and then just abrade them. I often do that kind of stuff in the palm of my hand back into the bag, so that you can just, you know, you see the seed, and then you can just do the, again, lightly blowing on them, but they're so tiny you have to blow on them really, really lightly, and the chaff will blow away and the seeds are left behind. Or just like pick them up and gently drop them in a wind, and the seeds will fall and the chaff will, in theory, and the chaff will blow away. But with the tiny, tiny seeds, it's not always that easy, but the theory works good. And then again, store in a cool, dry place. Okay, I think that's the last one, isn't it? So that was like a really, really concise view of how to save seeds from 8 different things. And of course, the corn was most difficult, and the peppers the easiest. But it's just learning. It's a learning curve. You got to play with it. You learn your own methods and how you feel most comfortable doing it. But above all, don't be afraid to do it. Just, you know, say, okay, I'm going to save tomato seed. And whether you do it on a paper towel, like grandmother did, or whether you do it in a larger batch, you know, whether you're saving 10 seeds or whether you're saving a half pound, it's completely up to you. And seeds are viable. Seeds want to grow. Seeds don't care who grows them. They want to grow. They want to make you happy. They're our most valuable asset. And there's nothing more fun than being out in the garden and planting and weeding and growing those plants and harvesting those seed. Thank you.
Thank
Questions?
you, Donna. Yeah, questions in the chat. Quick question.
Sure.
Rebecca had put a chart in from high mowing, but what's your sense from home use and from home seed saving in general about how long do different types of seeds last? Like how long does tomato seeds or pepper seeds for you? How long do those last for you if you grow them?
Tomato seeds, I think they have an infinite life. And one time I was in a grocery store and this man that I knew came up to me and he said, I had these seeds from Parks. They were 24 years old. I planted 10 of them and 9 of them came up. So, you know, I think they were probably, because they were from Parks, they were probably packed in foil, properly kept, no problem for 5, 6, 7 years on tomatoes. I've had lesser germination. And of course, tomatoes and peppers are 2 that are great. Basil, I think, is like 3 years. Oregano, I know you can save oregano seed, but as oregano becomes this mat of more and more and more oregano, as with time, I just kind of hack back the mats, and I haven't really timed how long the seeds, but I think that's also a 2 to 3 year seed life. And there are lots of charts out there. Johnny's, I believe, has one, High Morning has one, and I'm sure Seed Savers has a seed viability. It's usually in any of the charts that shows you how. Fedco, of course, has one. That the Fedco one is pretty good too, because it shows you when to start, any special treatments your seeds will need, whether they need to be covered, whether they need light, and how long the seeds will last.
And oftentimes, just to know that those charts in the catalogs are often referencing kind of how long those seeds will last and pass federal germination standards.
Correct.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that that seed won't last longer. So for an example, onion seed might last 5 or 10 years before it's all, quote, dead. But that could mean that, say, year 3, that it's now 50% germ. And so those of us who often home seed save, we often just sow thicker in our trays, and that just the older seed doesn't necessarily mean that it's dead. And sometimes those charts are more reflecting for a farmer, or just to know that it's above, say, the 75 or 70% standard that the feds have for germination.
Yeah.
And then Hannah makes a comment that in regards to fermentation, I was referring to making the nutrients in grains more bioavailable and digestible through quick fermentation before soaking before cooking, rather than the purpose of making alcohol. I've read about this being commonplace in many ancestral diets, so I was curious if anyone knew of one surrounding the many origins of polenta. If there's anything where we soak is there any polenta where the corn is soaked before grinding or cooking?
Well, we all know about the backwoods whiskey trade, so obviously corn goes to alcohol quite readily, right? So I can't see why it wouldn't also be a fermented product at the same time, just by letting it sit in water where, like wheat, it'll pick up a natural yeast and ferment.
No, I haven't experienced soaked in water, plain water. I've seen corn, of course, soaked in water that had wood ashes in it.
Right.
And using that method. So I really can't lend too much to that experience.
Yeah, I have also never heard of that, but I'm very curious now, and I think I love to ferment, so I feel like it's a project that I should try.
I'm sure it would work. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure it would, it is a sweet and it is a grain, and it would probably ferment relatively quickly.
Well, we're like 2 minutes over our wonderful
Not bad.
workshop hour. Not too bad. And wondered if our presenters had any final thoughts or words or encouragement for folks before we say goodnight or say good afternoon. Marissa, why don't you go first if you have any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys make some polenta is kind of my main thought, that if all of you go, and if you've never made it before and then you go and do, and you're like, this is a great thing to just have in my life. Well, then I feel good about it. So thank you all so much for coming and being a part of this, and thank you to my fellow presenters for their knowledge and their support.
Thank you, Marissa. I just got up from my chair a few minutes ago. I went over to my freezer and I pulled out some cornmeal. And I'm gonna run up just a little batch of polenta. So for our dinner event coming up.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll have some with my dinner event tonight. And what, this has been a great journey. It really has. I think the other day we were talking about it, and I guess we got started in May, way back in May.
April.
Okay, April. Okay. So, but along the way, I met a lot of people, and along the way, I learned a lot of different things about a lot of different things, and also made some good friends here, so I just would like to say that I'm very thankful and grateful that so many of you came to listen to us today and hear our presentation. That was very heartening, and hopefully everybody has a little something to take away from the presentation today, and something, a little nugget of knowledge that they can use in their own cooking, in their own life, and just keep learning as much as you can. So thank you.
Donna, any last words?
Eat polenta, make tomato sauce, eat it, and then grow it. Why not? It's just for the fun of it. And it's just such a life experience. And thank you, Sharon and Marissa, for being in this gang. And of course, our fearless leader, Heron, for pulling us through this. Thank you.
Not a truth here.
Fearless
But
leader.
also want to give our thanks to Leigh, who's making all of this wonderful
absolutely.
screen sharing
Absolutely, Leigh.
possible.
Thank you
so much, Leigh.
Thank you, Leigh.
Thank you.
So happy
Oh.
to be here.
Okay, well, everyone, around 6 p.m., you're invited to join what we're calling kind of an open dinner. It's kind of a version of an open mic. So between 6 and 7, if you're having dinner and you want to hop on, you'll notice there's a thing in the socio event, the winter conference event, where we can all sit down and share. Originally, this was the idea of like sharing what we're eating, sharing, that we grew it or what we grew in it, if there's something, or if the folks, maybe bought it from a farm, like what in that meal we've shared. And in some cases, some of us will have a dish where we both grown the thing that's in there, but also that it came from seed that we grew. So it might be tomatoes that we saved the seed from that we grew the sauce of. So, we're just sharing our food. And then at 7, we're going to have like a good old fashioned open mic. That's actually where I met Marissa and some other wonderful folks 2 years ago. We started like sharing poetry and songs and stories, and everyone's welcome to join that, whether you want to participate or just listen to us for a little bit, before you get totally sick of us. But we'd love to have you join us. Marissa and I will be hosting that at 6. And so thank you, everyone, and we'll see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you.
Marissa, I'm going to end the recording, but if you would just hold on for a moment.
Got it. I'm here.
All right. Well, got a few folks hanging on to listen to us.
Hey guys.
But that's okay. So 6 p.m. I'm gonna turn the room on like just only like 5 minutes before. We don't have to meet up like beforehand, I don't think. And I gotta cook some things. Oh,
Me
barely had time. But yeah, I think we're just going to see who joins and see how many people join for their dinner. And, if it's not a huge bunch of folks for the dinner, then we'll just, sort of pivot to sharing stories and open micing early.
Sounds good.
And I don't know how many people are going to show up. So we have this, to me, it's like we have this 7 to 9 or 6 to 9 slot. And I'm kind of like, hey, I'm okay if, if it ends early because, there's not people there. I'm not going to, I don't think we need to like hold the door till 9 and just have you and I staring at each other just in case someone shows up. But if
Right.
the room is busy and people are, let's keep going. But if
Totally.
it starts to slow down, I think my sense is that we give everybody an opportunity if there's 10 people to share one thing, and then we circle back and see if people want to share another thing,
Yeah.
rather than kind of like, if we give people 3 things, and sometimes people can leave because they feel like they're not like getting time, but we can kind of give everyone a chance to share and then like come back to someone who wants to share again. I think is, has seemed to work in the past. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I am. Oh, hold on. My roommate just got home and I don't want to bother him. Hi, Josh. I'm going upstairs. Yeah, I think that sounds really great. I was thinking of a similar thing. And as far as like culinary stuff, if we needed to fill up time at all, I do have, it's like 10 minutes long, a compilation of recipes that I've put together.
Totally.
That I've been recording and I put into one video for the specific purpose of this.
I love it.
Knowing in case like we need a filler, I have that. We don't need to have 10 minutes of me sharing my recipes, but like if we want any of that, that's available. And for things to share, do we have the submissions that or do we have
only one person has submitted something, and I haven't taken a look at it, and I'll see if I have time to do that before we jump in. Maybe some other people will share. It's one of these things where we've shared the link a couple different times ahead of time. We've shared the link during this. I think we're actually probably going to get more shares after this, but we'll just see. So I'll take a look at that and see what it is what the person submitted, if it's a story, and if it's something that is fits in or is appropriate, then we'll read it aloud. Or if they're there, maybe they can read it aloud. So.
Yeah. That sounds good. Okay, cool. Because I've gotten 2 submissions.
Oh,
well,
cool.
It's just I contact, like I sent to a lot of my friends, and one friend, he said, this is not anything useful, but I have this, and he sent me just a 3-line poem, and I was like, that's so beautiful, of course. And another friend sent me a nice little sort of reflection on the first time she ever experienced saving seed. So I can definitely read those if we want. And I've got some excerpts from a seed project I'd done that I'm happy to read whatever amount of. I have a fun poem that I feel like it's not something for me personally. It's by a poet, and it feels like something that's not for me personally to share and read. But I'll definitely send that in the chat and be like, this poem's really great if anyone feels moved by it and would like to read it right now. And I'll include in what I have for my own excerpts, there's a couple excerpts from writings that I like that mention seed that I could add in there. But yeah,
awesome.
All sounds great.
Okay, well, let's get cooking. I'll see you in almost 2 hours. And
is it this link that oh no, it's the other link. There's the open mic link. I forgot about that.
So yeah, there's another in your email. There should be a separate link for that. And so just so you know, the links that other people are using to join, like the attendees, they're coming in through the Socio platform. And at the bottom of if you open like the thing, whatever it is you want to attend, at the bottom there's a Zoom
like view this
PDF that you go, and then it gives you the link. So if you find yourself caught, it's in the Socio platform. It's not on the NOFA New York website schedule. Okay. So it's either the email that you were sent, that either I sent you or Jessica sent you. Both of those are the same, or this other thing. I actually don't think I sent you anything about.
Jessica sent me the open mic.
Jessica sent us. Yeah.
That was why I got confused. I was like in your waiting room for like 10 minutes. I was like, but aren't we gonna start? And then I was like, it's the one from NOFA that I got. That's the Polenta link I need to go click on. What am I doing?
I know. I was worried that was going to happen with a bunch of folks because we've been meeting in Zoom, obviously, and it's like, oh no, not those Zoom links. So we had this. You're not the only one that's done that. Don't worry. I almost opened it the first time.
Okay.
Like Friday night. I was like, oh no.
Wait a second.
Well,
awesome.
Okay. You
I'm
take
so
care.
Excited. That was a really great session. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was great. You all three of you did amazing, and we hit
Thanks.
the time marks perfectly, and
Yeah,
everybody.
sorry if I was like rushing through by the end of my origins one. I was just like, I know I'm gonna go over. Like I need a blah, 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 blah. So I feel like I was a little like, blah, 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 blah. But
No, you did. You sometimes you gotta do. We're trying to impart a lot of information, and you just gotta go for it. So, all right, I'll talk to you
Okay.
soon. See you,
I'll see
Alita.
you soon. Bye, Heron.
Bye bye.